Thanks so much for being with us here. Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. We continue following the latest on the Midtown Atlanta shooting that happened yesterday. So the suspect is now in custody. He was due to face a judge earlier this morning at 11:30, but he decided to waive his first appearance in court. Does not have any further impact on his rights. But we also received a short time ago an update on the victims. Remember, this shooting killed one woman, resulted in 4 other women being seriously hurt. We've learned that 2 of those victims are in critical condition. 2 of them are in stable condition. A lot that we are keeping our eyes on here on Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus. But remember, this suspected gunman, 24-year-old Dion Patterson, he was arrested last night in Cobb County. He's actually a veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard. He is now charged with murder in this mass shooting. It all unfolded around noon yesterday on Peachtree Street at the North Side Medical Facility in Midtown. If you were in that area, you know it was shut down for hours. Police say Patterson was in a waiting room at the hospital facility, and he got agitated. He took out a handgun and he opened fire. And then he fled from the scene. Well, authorities say 39-year-old Amy St. Pierre was the victim killed. She was an employee at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And again, the other victims who did survive, 2 of them in critical condition, 2 of them are in stable condition. My colleague, Atlanta News First reporter Rebecca Schramm, has a bit more on the accused shooter, his arrest as well. Let's listen.
These are medical offices right across from the Google building, which you can see from the interstate. These offices will be closed today after becoming the scene of a mass shooting. 5 women shot, 1 of them killed, 3 critically wounded. Take a look. This is video from our Atlanta News First chopper hovering last night over the Waterford Place condominiums, not far from the Battery at Truist Park. This was about 8 p.m. You can see police escorting the man to the back of a patrol car. 24-year-old Dion Patterson is now charged with 1 count of murder, 4 counts of aggravated assault, and no doubt many more charges will follow. We spoke with several people in that area who saw officers swarm that area. One man shared with us some video he took as officers drove off in a caravan with Patterson in the back of a patrol car.
About 40 police cars come out of here and they found him. Me and my brother stood here on the corner and kind of just thank you and everything, just so the community give them support for doing this huge thing today, which we really appreciate them.
Back here in Midtown, that sense of relief and gratitude being felt throughout Metro Atlanta. Hundreds of officers from multiple jurisdictions took part in that manhunt. In Midtown, Rebecca Schramm, Atlanta News First.
All right, our thanks to Rebecca for that story and that coverage. I want to bring in now a special guest joining us this afternoon here on Atlanta News First Plus. We have Agent Ted Golden, retired law enforcement officer, also longtime drug enforcement agency member there as well. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Golden. What is your initial reaction to what happened yesterday?
It's a tragic situation that unfortunately looks like it involves someone who has an addiction and some law enforcement training. And when you got a gun with that, it's never going to come out good. It appears it's not a large caliber weapon because it didn't do a lot of damage to the people. Some of them have survived. But it's unfortunate that you've got someone who apparently had some mental health issues and also had possession of a firearm.
Excuse me. What would be next, of course, because you've been a part of numerous investigations, countless investigations in your career. What comes next in the investigation?
Well, obviously he's going to get bond set. He declined his initial appearance, so that's just to notify him of the charges. Next, I'll have a bond hearing, and of course it depends on whether the district attorneys decide to prosecute him locally or they take it to the federal level, depending on how they look at it. Because if he's possessing a firearm, possession of a felony, they could probably come up with some federal charges also. But initially he'll be charged locally, and they'll set bond probably within the next 3 to 5 days.
And in terms of the response of law enforcement officers in this case, what did you think that this was really an ideal response? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, anytime that there are multiple people injured, you're going to get a high-level response from law enforcement. usually specialized units are the ones that come out and try to track them down. The local police officers are the ones that usually get there first and set a perimeter and try to identify who the victims are and maybe get an idea of what the guy looks like, what he's wearing, where he's headed. All that stuff is critical. I think from the Brian Nichols situation, we learned a lot. I was here when that happened, actually on the way to work. And we didn't have a way, the federal agencies had no way of being notified that there was an issue happening right there in Atlanta. So I'm sure they solved that problem with some kind of communications. But essentially, the more folks can get engaged, the better it's going to be. The outcome's going to be. And the quicker law enforcement can get there, the better it's going to be. And obviously, with today's technology, being able to track a suspect with, the multiple CCTV units that are available now makes it a whole lot easier to at least try to figure out where he went. And in this instance, it was able to help them get photographs of him in the elevator and also outside the elevator. So clearly they were able to get the information that was sufficient to be able to run him down.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that was pretty remarkable. The fact that they, released these surveillance images of this suspect, 24-year-old Deion Patterson, very quickly after this shooting took place, and they were able to provide his identity and everything very quickly. And that, I think that must have been very helpful in terms of helping track him down.
Yeah, it helps because then you can at least put a name and a face on it, and folks can be aware of what he looks like and where he's going. Especially nowadays with everybody carrying, phones in their purses and pockets that are able to broadcast the signal that shows photographs and possibly movement and where they might go. I mean, they knew within 30 minutes they had hijacked the truck, and they knew that he was in Cobb County possibly within an hour of the incident. So it makes a big difference when you've got the technological advantages that allow you to be able to not only gather information but disseminate information.
Absolutely. So what next going forward do we need to consider here? Is this, of course the charges have been filed, but the investigation will continue, right?
Of course it will, and then no doubt that he'll probably have an attorney that will use his mental health issue as a paramount reason why he did what he did. But let's also be aware of the fact that he's also had a drug issue. I mean, he was there to get some medications for whatever he was going through, whether it's PTSD or some other kind of medication he may have been on. But people on meds tend to do things rashly, and obviously he became very upset and pulled the gun. So it's unfortunate, but apparently his mother was trying to get him some help. And many times the best thing to do is do an emergency commitment rather than try to go to a doctor. And being a local cop, I know what it's like to deal with mental patients. The one time I had to call for help with a female mental patient who refused to take her medication. So it is an issue. It's one of those things that pervades our society. And it also be aware of the fact that we guesstimate, and it's a guess, anywhere from 40 to 60% of all the inmates in our local jails have mental health issues.
Wow.
And somebody asked a question the other day, we were talking, how soon can you diagnose with someone with mental health issues? As soon as they're with someone who can professionally look at them and determine if there's something else going on, as early as pre-K and first grade. You can tell children have certain mental health issues. And I think that what happens is as we get to middle and high school, those issues become up front because of what's going on in their school environment. And many times we miss out on an opportunity to diagnose and get some help. And then, of course, this young man was in the U.S. Coast Guard. So I'm wondering how he was able to get past the entry without having, had a real good psychological evaluation. Because, even though back in the day it was just a mental health screening, usually issues showed up during training. And for him to be employed, I think, 3-4 years maybe with the Coast Guard, I'm wondering what went on during his career that caused him to go through these kind of changes, and especially having been recently dismissed from Coast Guard or released from Coast Guard, what kind of issues having to cause him to lapse into this mental health issue, and obviously need medication to keep himself calm.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it really is such a tragedy. One kind of glimmer of hope here is that 2 of the 4 victims who did survive, that they are in stable condition, the other 2 in critical condition, and of course 1 woman killed. So just heartbreaking. And, we really appreciate your insight into how this process works in terms of the investigation, in terms of the apprehension, and what we can expect moving forward.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And of course, here on Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus, we're going to continue to follow the latest on this Midtown shooting. Thank you for being with us.
Good to be here. And of course, they're the best place.